I'm Pamela Portnoy.
I'm Alexa Marie Anderson.
And no one's okay.
Hello. Hello, you guys.
Hey.
You guys, we have an awesome show for you today. We are hosting the wonderful actors and producers, James Pratt and Daniel Musial. They are actors, producers, directors. They're working on a really cool film right now called Malibu Crush. And we're here to kind of talk to them about juggling, acting, and producing and directing and the great things that come with that and the challenges that come with that. So, from what we've looked into with your film, it's about two best friends from Pasadena who pretend to be highly acclaimed film school students in order to declare their love to an ex-girlfriend living in Sydney, Australia. Tell us, how did you guys come up with this concept? How did you meet? How did this all start to come together?
Would you want to start down with how we met?
Yeah, it was 6 or 7 years ago, I think. We met on a sort of those casting directors run workshops, and a bunch of actors. Yeah, we just happened to meet there, just started chatting. And then I think James moved to LA for a few years and we hadn't seen each other. And then James was acting in a film called On Halloween, and they were looking for someone that could do an American accent in Sydney. And he called me, reached out. We hadn't spoken in a while. And yeah, basically we met on the film again and started hanging out again. And then James told me about the script, which you can explain.
Yeah, no, that was really good. And I'll go back a little bit. When we say we met at one of these like casting workshops, it was one of those ones where they kind of spend, let's say, 3 days teaching you, but maybe only half a day is teaching you. The rest is just name dropping actors that they've cast in big movies. So you're kind of sitting there going, oh, wow, yeah, really? You cast Robert De Niro and you cast this person. They don't have any work on. So they're running these workshops, obviously. But we were kind of like, Dan and I were, we were young enough to kind of buy into maybe the first day where like, oh, wow, like we didn't realize we'd done no work. We were just sitting on the floor basically listening to these stories about how his casting agent cast these things. And by the second day, Dan and I kind of were like, probably had something in common. We're like, hey, like, we're not really doing anything. We're just hearing these like second tier stories. And I think that was probably something that bonded us a little bit because not everybody in that casting workshop kind of picked up on the fact that we did very little casting and more just listening. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Dan?
So you guys were bonding over that shared experience.
Yeah, sure. we were kind of like, I think there's kind of like something's missing here. Like we kind of heard this story before now on the first day. So, and it was actually interesting because one of the guys that we cast in the film, Malibu Crush, we also met him in that casting workshop as well. His name's Scott Miller. He did a really big film with one of the guys from Game of Thrones not long after it. But he was also like basically the three of us. We kind of were a little bit like, look, this is not really what we're paying for. And that was probably the thing that drew us together a little bit.
So you kind of just wanted to take your career more into your own hands than necessarily kind of do the textbook kind of, these are the steps you need to take as an actor to slowly go up the ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think, Dan?
Yeah, for sure. I think we did definitely. And after we met at the workshop, it kind of, when you're an actor in Sydney, it can be difficult and you kind of, all you ever get seen for is TV commercials. Myself and James had the same agent, so we had that kind of, we bonded over that. And then it got to the stage, I feel like we both kind of have that want to make our own work and something like that. So, I always felt like I was still making short films and web series, but when James came to me with the idea of doing a feature, like that's what, that really appealed to me.
That's awesome. James, I know that you've spent some time in LA. Have you noticed a difference in the business over here versus over in Sydney?
You know what? That's a really good question because I feel like that was perhaps one of the reasons why I was kind of slingshotting back to the casting experience because See, in the States, as an actor in LA, for example, casting agents are always trying to find the next big thing. So as an example, you can just be another model or just another person, and they'll bring you in for an NBC pilot. In Australia, it's very different because there's much less work. So how that kind of ends up is the casting agents don't really ever want to find the next big thing. They don't want to play it. They want to play very, very safe, and they want to basically pre-cast a film, let's say with half the actors before they even start casting, because they want to make sure that if the movie fails, like the Australian feature film fails, that at least they're like, oh, well, we cast this name and we cast this name. Whereas in the States, I found it, the casting agents are much more welcoming. You know, you can be someone with just a headshot, and at least they might want to see you. And so when Dan and I were doing this casting workshop, and I'll sort of stop bashing them up a bit, but when we did it, we were kind of like, look, they're not going to, you know, they're not casting any big feature films anymore. This particular casting workshop, they're not really doing anything. And they're probably not going to see Dan and I tomorrow because they don't have any work. So it wasn't like, say, an American casting workshop where you go in there, you build a rapport with them, you show your acting chops. And unfortunately, that's just the difference, I think, with the volume of work that LA gets and the volume of work that other spots around the world is, by default, a lot of people start playing it safe. And it's a different beast. It's a different animal. Dan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's sort of bizarre if you look at our TV shows because they're all the same people, just in a different show playing different characters. So it's like a small group. So it's really hard, you know, to try. If you're a small actor, you might get a small role, you know, one day at best. Like that's all you can really hope for here.
Wow, that's fascinating. I didn't realize there was such a difference between, I mean, I just don't know that world over there. So that's really fascinating to find that out for sure. How do you, jumping into something a little different, how are you guys juggling both like the producing, the acting, and then James, as well directing? How has that been?
Dan, do you want to start off?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, I considered myself the producer, number one. So even when I said I'd help James do this, I thought I wanted an acting role, but I wasn't guaranteed an acting role. I thought, look, if there's one for me, that's great. But if not, I'm the producer and it needs to be right for the film. So I guess, I still see myself as a producer rather than an actor. And it even got to the stage when we were about to film before Corona, I thought, oh yeah, I have to act in this thing too. I completely forgot about it. So I guess it's it is difficult, but and it's exciting to be able to do both, I suppose.
Yeah. Sure.
And Dan's really talented as an actor, as a producer. So I feel like it's made my role a lot easier because I've got to spend a lot of time with Dan, basically pulling these actors into line, as we were talking about before, with certain things. Dan's got a really good personality for that. Whereas I feel like juggling, the directing and the acting and things, if you're dealing with someone that doesn't have, I think, an adaptable personality, I think it makes everyone else's job a lot more harder. So.
Absolutely. It sounds like you guys have a good partnership going on.
Yeah. Well, we had fun on this previous feature film.
We did. Yeah.
Just to throw Dan into it a little bit. So basically we shot this feature film and Dan's hair, the way you can see it right now, we wrapped the feature film. There was some miscommunication between the director and behind the scenes and Dan decided to cut his hair off.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was 4 months. Yeah, we'd been wrapped 4 months, and then we obviously were getting called back, and I didn't have my hair anymore.
So they had some continuity issues.
Had some huge issues actually, and I had to actually get like a wig. A pretty bad wig, and I cut it down, but it looked terrible. So I don't think they used any of it. But yeah, then I actually grew my hair back and shot it like 6 months later. So yeah.
Oh my God,
yeah. Well, you have some amazing hair, so I can see why they were upset.
Thank you.
Yeah, for our listeners who are listening right now, you're not getting video, but let's describe. Like he's got quite the very elaborate, awesome mane going.
Yes, it is a mane. That is a great way to describe it for sure.
It's the Corona lockdown mane. It got even worse. It was long before, and it's getting worse. But yeah, I'm happy with it.
It's been fun to watch people who choose to either grow it out or people who choose to have significant others or friends cut hair for them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There was actually we were shooting this film and we were shooting kind of on the outskirts of the city this one day, and Dan had this fake wig on because he was in the same scene as me that day. And I'm telling you, it looked like a mop that had just been like kind of put on his head and dyed the same color. Like it was very abstract. It really did not look natural. And we were shooting. And I think the talk between the cast and the crew was like, look, I think they're just going to have to go for some really big close-ups, like close-ups of his eyes. Because if it's too wide, everyone will like, that is such a different hairstyle. But then we were shooting and this old guy came up to us on the side of the road, like when we were sitting around. And he said to Dan, he's like, oh, like an older guy. He's like, oh, young man, like you have such a great hairstyle. And he actually thought it was real because he started asking Dan, like, you know, how long did it take to grow?
How long have you grown it?
Yeah, and
I didn't tell him either. I went, oh yeah, a while. I didn't tell him, so
just played along with it. I love it.
Yeah. But for anybody who could see on the outside, it was literally like a mop sitting on Dan's hair. It was.
No.
Yeah.
I can actually produce the wig. Do you want to see the wig? I've got the wig. Hang on, 2
I
seconds.
would love to see the wig.
Oh yes.
There is a side note. There is a side note. When have you got it, Dan?
Here it is.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, that's very different.
Yeah,
that's very different than what you got going on top of your head.
Yeah. It's the best I could do, but yeah.
That's epic.
I mean,
wow.
The color is similar, but the texture is very clearly not.
No.
Yeah.
So
it's shiny and
it's very shiny and it actually stinks. So it was bad to have on my head, but
wigs are so hot too. Like, oh my God, like wearing wigs are really hot. So make sure you have sweat. It's awful.
I wouldn't recommend it.
You probably do a lot of wigs, Alexa, right?
Yeah, and I have done some wigs in my musical theater shows. Yes, absolutely, and they're not the greatest. They can be itchy and hot.
Yeah,
but gotta do what you gotta do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
James, I'm curious as to what your experience has been so far. I'm not necessarily certain how far you guys have gotten along in the process with Malibu Crush because everything has been halted because of the pandemic. But have you guys gotten into rehearsals? And if so, like, how has it been directing yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So to kind of give you a really lay of the land, we were really quick in pre-production. Like I spoke to Dan, maybe was it October, November last year?
Yeah, maybe a little bit early, maybe September. Yeah.
September, yeah. So I had this script. It was at CAA for a while, came really close to being made a couple of times, and it was really based between these two guys that were in New Jersey, and they go to Malibu in pursuit of this long-lost love. And then I found myself back in Australia over Christmas or just before the end of last year, and reconnected with Dan from the feature film, and I rewrote the script so that instead of it being these two guys from New Jersey go to Malibu, it was these two guys from Pasadena go to Australia. So there was a little bit of rewriting to have done. And then I pitched it to Dan, and he was really like, just loved it. And then we basically started the casting process. And it was a really quick process. Like we got through casting really quickly. There was a couple of key roles that we had a little bit of trouble with. But you know what probably the takeaway looking back was, when you don't have a big studio type film where you've got to make, say, 10 phone calls for every decision, or you've got to loop in 5 people in every email, I found that because early on there was someone else that was involved with Dan and I, and we kind of were like, look, I think this guy's just not running the same race as us. You know, we're taking 2 steps forward, he's stepping 1 step back. And I remember we got maybe everybody cast except for 3 or 4 people in about 3 weeks, really quickly. And we just called in a lot of favors as well. So we had a few people, friends of ours that were back from LA and Australia, that we were like, hey, can you do this? A buddy of mine called Dane, who just finished Aquaman, he was like, sure, I'm happy to do this stuff. And so by combining just that, I think, you know, Dan and I work well together, plus called in a lot of favors. Between September, we kind of cast, ends of September to say December, we'd done the casting. And then we moved into rehearsals the end of December, beginning of January. And then we're all set to shoot. And then the coronavirus hit.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we were about 3 days before we were going to shoot. It sort of got really serious here. So, yeah, at least it wasn't in the middle of it. That could have been worse. So.
Yeah. So, but to answer your question about directing and the rehearsals, originally when I was wanting to do the film, I was kind of just wanting to direct it because I was looking at the idea of it was my script. It's probably a lot easier to find an actor than a director, like a good actor director, because, with a good director with a feature film, they've got to put in a lot of energy and time. They've got to love the script. So the idea of me directing was also, I directed this documentary in 2011, which I loved doing, and I just really enjoyed the process. But then as we were casting and we were looking at the budget as well, how can we save money on a lead actor? And also then the idea of, well, Dan and I have worked really well together. There's other people we've worked with. Let's just get this film done. And so that's when I kind of was like, okay, well, I'll do acting, directing. Dan was always going to be an actor. And I know he said he was happy to be the producer, but he's very, very talented. And he has a really good role, by the way, as well. He has some, he actually gets, I'll tell him about the bike scene later if you want.
Yes.
We want to hear about the bike scene.
Yes.
Do you want to
Go ahead, do it now.
Well, we're still in negotiations, actually. But apparently I'm meant to be naked on this bike in a particular scene. So, but I'm starting to worry because it's getting close to winter here. So
I feel like without it being winter, it might be uncomfortable as it is. But to add that bonus of it just being cold.
Exactly.
And to put it into context so you don't think this is just some creepy plan that I have. Basically, there's a scene where these guys are going to crash a wedding, there's security, and Dan's character has been a complete asshole all the way through the film, and this is his chance to redeem himself. So basically, he needs to create a distraction for these security guards to crash tackle him so these guys can get into the wedding. So it's kind of like the last hurrah for Dan's character to kind of, I guess it's his awakening period where he turns the corner, and it's a real pivotal moment. But it's a comedy movie, not supposed to be a weird movie at all.
No.
Yeah.
I think comedies have weird elements, and that helps
I
elevate them even more. So I'm very excited about it.
Would you add anything to the process, Dan? Like rehearsals?
No. I thought you summed it up well. Like it was, I think, like you said, just being the two of us, it allowed us to just make decisions really quickly. And I kind of feel like, not that we didn't feel like we had anything to lose, but we kind of almost did in a way. Like we just thought, let's just have a crack and see what happens. And I think a lot of people, and especially that there's not that many feature films made in Australia. So I feel like a lot of people here wait till they've got, a huge budget or whatever. And you just kind of got to do it. And a lot of people that have been in LA would come back and like tell us how, everything's happening. There's always, obviously not at the moment, but there's so many films happening, and here it just doesn't happen. So, a lot of people were so keen to be involved because there just isn't many feature films made here. So that made it kind of easy.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
And one of the things leading off that, which has really helped me throughout the years, is I've been really fortunate. I mean, I've told you girls as well, like, one of the executives with Mogul Studios is you get to go inside, not just, film and TV studios, but you get to actually talk to people who will tell you straight rather than like a casting class or rather than someone's trying to sell you something. And one of the biggest takeaways from Hollywood is whether you're an actor or director, it's have you got a feature film and have you completed it? And that will lead to bigger things. I keep hearing a lot of the time from a lot of actors or a lot of first-time filmmakers, and they keep saying the same thing. They're like, oh, you got to come out the gates so strong. Like, you've got to come out, you got to make big money, or I can't make my film unless I have $5 million. I just can't. And if you look at all these actors, like if you look at, Vin Diesel, if you look at, John Turtlebound, you look at all these, he's a director. If you look at these guys, their first film is like a $50,000 film that nobody sees. It's the guy from How I Met Your Mother.
Sometimes even less.
Yeah.
With Blumhouse, when they got started, they made Paranormal Activity for I think it was 15,000, if I'm not mistaken, and then it became this hundreds and hundreds of $1 million franchise.
You have to start somewhere. I mean, come on, you got to just jump in and do it.
Exactly.
And there's a huge gap between, like, for example, from a director's point of view, where, I mean, there's some really talented directors out there, but they've got a script and they've sat on it for like 10 years and they keep saying, like, I need that 5 million. But the problem is that it's really hard for an investor to say, hey, I'm going to give you $5 million, even if everything's lined up, because if someone's done a $100,000 film and they've at least finished it, the director's like, well, I know you won't freak out on set. I know you'll do a better film the next time round. One of our producers on the film, John Simpson, he's actually a judge at Cannes Film Festival. He had some great advice for the cast and the crew early on. He said, pretty much, if you make a film, your first film, and it's not, it doesn't set the world on fire, that's exactly what it's supposed to be, because they're expecting your second film to be better and your third film to be better, and your fourth film to be better. But if you have this idea that you're only going to make one film your whole life and it's got to be perfect, you're not leaving yourself any room to improve. And obviously, what someone can do on a $100,000 budget and what someone can do on a $1 million budget is very different. So if you say, look, this is what I can do on $100,000, imagine if you gave me $1 million. So it's just that mindset of just going for it and not talking yourself out of it is what I find a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I love that so much. And one thing I've noticed, I've on a couple of occasions have had the amazing opportunity to be on the other side of the table in the casting process for several projects. And as an actor, I remember learning a ton of what to do, what not to do in the room. I'm wondering if throughout your guys' casting process, there were any standout moments that you guys learned from.
Yeah, I think definitely there was a lot of great moments. That kind of, Billy White, who plays the equal lead in the film of Dewey, we actually had a different actor that was sort of more high profile in Sydney, and we wanted to get him, but just kind of the dates didn't really line up. And we kind of had Billy as a bit of a backup, really. We got him to do a self-tape, but then he was just like so perfect for the role. And I remember when he sent me the self-tape, I was like texting James at like 2 a.m. and we're like texting each other back. We were so excited. So I really want everyone, if they check out the film, to see Billy White. He's going to be awesome as Dewey.
Was it how he inhabited the role? Or pretty was much. It just kind of he was kind of that person already?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. That might be a little offensive to him, but yeah, he is pretty much Dewey. He's no offense, Billy, if you listen to this, but yeah, he's pretty much that guy. So
to give you guys a little bit of context to what Dan was saying, the script calls for someone that's not offensively loud, but more your underdog. So think more 80s comedies, John Candy. You like him because he's likable, but he's inappropriate. Chris Farley, that kind of thing, rather than kind of like the shock humor of just someone shouting stuff for no reason. So we found it really hard because we found all these really funny guys, but they were perhaps just a little too physical for the role. We wanted kind of a little bit more docile. I mean, put it this way, Billy's character in the film is by far the dumbest character in the film, but he's the most likable and he's always the comedic relief. And we were really struggling to find that balance of like likable, but also like funny, because it was either they're funny, but they're shock value, they're physically intimidating, or they're just not funny. And we were struggling. And then we found this guy and his showreel was a drama showreel. Like I looked at it and I said to Dan, I was like, I mean, he kind of looks he could probably do it, but his showreel was him in a rehab, like drama scene where he's talking about how he's trying to come clean. And I was like, it's pretty intense. And then we saw this, when Dan was saying we saw this self-tape, this guy was, I mean, I'll give you an idea for Billy, the actual person. The other day we saw on Instagram Live, everybody else is like at the beach doing things. He's, for some reason, he was playing a keyboard in like a paddock with ponies. Basically,
Oh, really?
singing to Tony.
That's amazing. I want to be his friend.
He's
a
so
legend.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just another time we were like, hey, Billy, can we come around to your place? Because we're location scouting. And usually like actors are a little sensitive, like, oh, what time? Like, you know, we had the cinematographer with, like, it's a bit of a crew with us. And I remember, I mean, Dan was out the front. He basically opens the door with a beer in his hand, saying, "What's the beer do you want?" And we went inside, and he said, "Oh yeah, like you guys can do whatever you want in the house, no problem." Like, he was just so laid back, so naturally the character. But his showreel was this heavy drama scene, which was probably a little bit to do as well in Australia. Australia does dramas really well, but they're less comedies than in America.
We talk about that all the time on this show, in that the line between comedy and drama is not that thick. Like, I feel like some of the best comedic legends have a lot of talent when it comes to dramatic roles.
Yeah,
it seems like that, doesn't it? Yeah, I know Eric Bana was someone that inspired me as an actor, and he started in stand-up comedy here. So it's kind of, it's definitely true.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Comedy. I mean, I just think it, you know, you got to have really good acting chops to do comedy, and not that you don't for dramatic, but you really have to go for things. So I think it's just a great skill to have in general. And I think it even helps you in your dramatic roles for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any other funny stories when it came to casting your project?
Talk about.
No, we did have a lot. Like, it was actually a fun process. Like, we actually got pretty lucky, and most of the people we actually saw, we kind of didn't. We got a lot of people to do self-tape. So when we actually met them, we knew they were going to be good. But it was pretty fun. We've cast Britney Hockley, who was on the Australian version of The Bachelor. Pretty sure you guys have that there. So that was her kind of her kind of first acting role. But she was actually really good. So we're actually surprised. So that was a nice moment, because we kind of felt like she'd be great to have in the film for publicity. But then when we actually met her, and she was really laid back and also could really act. So that was actually a surprise to us. So that was a nice surprise.
Yeah, really professional.
That's awesome. So since everything's been kind of put on pause, how have you guys been dealing with that? Do you have any plans moving forward when it comes to putting this film together? I feel like a lot of people are in the process of putting plans into place, or just kind of seeing what happens, and maybe somewhere a combination of both.
Yeah, it's interesting, because back here, some of our like TV shows have started again.
Really?
But they're really... I
feel like it's different everywhere now, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think we're actually lucky because it's not as bad here, obviously, as in the US. So we feel like there's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's just that kind of, you know, weighing up to make sure it's safe and everything like that. And if there's a second wave of it or whatever. So it's a kind of a tough decision to know when to do it again. But we're basically having meetings on that, and just it's changing so quickly. So it's kind of hard to get a read on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about you guys? Is there any sort of light at the end of the tunnel with casting? As self-tapes being quite popular, or?
I know that a lot of the studios are going through they're trying to figure out what changes to implement on set. So information about that has slowly been leaking out, but it's mostly just been self-tape submissions.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and sessions over like Zoom and stuff like that. You know, I know they're adding like, you know, some live features to like our Actors Access and things to do live sessions, which is cool. It's really cool that, you know, we're able to do that.
You know what? I heard the other day that HGTV TV actually bought this show. Like these people pitched this show to them, which is the whole thing shot on Zoom.
Really?
It's very, very cheap to shoot, because what it is essentially is it's three professionals in the property space, like, you know, interior decorator, you know, someone who's a master salesperson, another person that's a master designer. And pretty much what they do is they just have them talk about a topic, and then they put it over the top with montage footage. And so, I mean, that can be put together in like a day. But because the montage footage is obviously shot 4K, 6K footage, that looks really good. And then it cuts back to the Zoom chat with the people that are arguing. And it's actually really simple, but it kind of fits together really well. Like if you tried to pitch that show like a year ago, I think everybody would be like, you're crazy to think someone's going to pay to watch that.
It is interesting what the expectations have completely changed. Like a lot of the talk shows are now on YouTube via the hosts' homes. And I really am curious to see if it's going to continue in this kind of way, or everything's going to go back to the way it was. I feel like it's not going to go 100% in either way.
No. Yeah, because it is good. That kind of raw feel that you get, it has been good. Like I'm starting to enjoy it. And I think people, even though the quality is probably not quite as good, you kind of put up with it because you get, they're interesting interviews. And I think going forward, people really look to do that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been interesting for podcasting.
Yeah. Everyone started a podcast now.
Right. Trying to figure out the technology has been amazing because usually I don't know how you do your podcast generally, James, but we are usually in studio, and figuring this out has been a trip.
Yeah, right.
No, you guys have done great because I think personally, like just being able to adapt and do it, like to keep going is already like a home run because I've met that many people that are kind of like, they put their head in the sand and they're kind of like, oh, it's an excuse to slow down, or it's an excuse, the coronavirus. I can't do my podcast at the moment, or I can't go to work, or all I can do is write scripts and edit. Like you guys are actually, hasn't really changed anything.
I will be completely honest with you. When this all started, I said to Alexa, I'm like, I'm going away for a couple of weeks. We're going to put everything on hold. I need to collect myself.
I was going to call you out. I was like, well, we did take a small little break. And then I was like, we need to keep going.
Pamela has short-circuited, or we just need to figure this out.
Yeah, we pull each other along together. We're both,
If Alexa's like, you know what, I can't do this, I'm like, we're going to do it. And if I say, you know what, we can't do this, she's like, no, we're doing it. Yep. All right.
Yep. All right. Yes.
Do you guys have any advice for anyone that's doing their podcast at the moment?
Absolutely not.
We're still figuring it out.
I guess just find the joy and try to be patient with yourself, especially with the tech. That's the only advice I feel entitled to give because I need a lot of advice.
Yeah, patience is key. Like I remember one day, like the first time we tried to record remote, it took us maybe an hour before we actually could hit the record button because we were just like figuring everything out, so you have to be patient. Everything's new, and
there was one time where I think we started recording for about half an hour and then we realized we weren't even recording.
Yeah.
So that was great.
It happens. We're not perfect. Yeah.
I actually panicked just now when I was talking to you guys. We were about like 7 minutes in. I looked down just to double check we were recording.
Just to make sure.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I was going to say we've been watching a lot of films over our quarantine. We wanted to know if you guys had any recommendations for us.
You got any, James? I've just been watching the Michael Jordan documentary, so I'm not helping.
A lot of my guy friends have been telling me about this. I haven't seen anything about it myself.
No, it's awesome. I loved it. You should watch it. It's good.
It's a good plug for Netflix.
I feel like you don't even need to like basketball to watch it. Like it's, I've loved it. Yeah.
I actually used to be the captain of my high school team.
Right.
We never won a game while I was captain, so I don't know if I should should feel about that. But I do love basketball, so I'll have to check it out.
I'm terrible at all sports.
Right.
Except dance.
Dance is a sport.
Have you guys got any recommendations?
That is a great question. What did we just watch?
We just watched Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, The Matrix, like oldies but goodies.
Yes. Yeah. Legend. We are going to be, I watched. Pam's going to watch it.
Do you guys think the movies have become better or worse? Like, I'll give you an idea. I was watching, I watched the original Point Break a couple of days ago. Like, it just came on my cable TV.
Yeah.
So it was like Catherine Bigelow, James Cameron was an EP, Keanu Reeves. Like, and I remember watching that movie maybe like 20 years ago. And I was like, this is the coolest movie I've ever seen. And I watched it a couple of days ago and it's one of my favorites. And I'm like, this movie is just timeless. Like, it is so cool.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe I'm just of a different generation now, but I don't find that I watch a movie now as much and go, well, that was the coolest movie I've ever seen. Like, I feel like movies had a little bit more detail, or they gave it a little bit more of a reaction to you. What do you guys think?
I sort of have to agree with that. Yeah. But I also like a lot of the classics as well. So I don't know if it's like nostalgia, maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah. But I know I would agree with that. And I think going off of that, I think the writing for TV has really improved, actually. I'm really enjoying a lot of shows lately. So on the flip side, there's that.
Yeah.
True.
I agree. I think TV has been excellent and kind of where the amazing material has been for the most part. But there is something to watching a film that really made an impact on you years and years ago and still having it resonate with you. Maybe like watching it at a very formative time, like Point Break. I remember fucking epic movie, and I'm sure I'll probably watch it again tonight because now I'm in the mood.
You just mentioned it. I was like, oh, that's a great one. I'm gonna go watch that.
Now I have to watch it, but I feel that way about The Matrix. Like, The Matrix came out in '99, and we watched it a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, it's my favorite movie. It still stands the test of time for me, and probably always will. But I also think that when I first saw that movie, it made a huge impression on me. So that probably will never go away. I don't know. I guess it depends on the movies right now. Like 1917, I think, was probably a movie that I felt that way about. That was recent.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys got the chance to see that one.
No.
It's so good.
If you haven't, you should watch it. You'd enjoy it. Yeah.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Have you
Is
seen
it
anything
like horror
cool,
or
Daniel?
something? It's no, like I said, I just watch. Well, I haven't been watching sport because it's not on. But no, I mean, I watch, like you said, the TV, like Better Call Saul. Like, I love that. I've been watching that. So that's that. I'm pretty boring like that.
Were you a Breaking Bad fan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was late to it. Like, when everyone was watching it, I was like, nah, I don't need to see it. But then I smashed like last year, and then became addicted to it, and then I got into Soul as well, which I think's really good. It's kind of I feel like it's kind of its own piece next to Breaking Bad, which is kind of ridiculous that they've managed to do that. But I feel like they're getting too old now for it to be a prequel. But so I don't know how much longer it can go for. So that'll be interesting because it's going to start looking weird soon, I reckon. But I love that. Yeah, I love that show.
Awesome. So I guess we have, unless there are any objections in the group, I think we have arrived at a very important place in our show where I'm going to ask you guys, are you okay?
You go first, James. I need some thinking time.
That was just like lighting up. You know what? I've had to adapt a lot in the last probably 6 weeks. Quarantine's been stressful for me, honestly. I know a couple of people close to me have said, I think you have ADD. Because I've had to go from like doing a million miles an hour with appointments and things like that to now just being confined indoors a lot of the time. And I think I've tried to compensate for that by just working later into the night. You know, stuff with Mogul Studios, that's on at 12:30 at night. So you know what? I can finish all my stuff with Malibu Crush here at 10 o'clock, and then I can jump on, Zoom calls with Warner Brothers and stuff with Mogul at 12:30 because that's like 8 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles. So I feel like it's been probably an adaptation phase for me, but a really good learning phase as well. But definitely a different time.
Yeah.
Totally.
You are the guy I thought would handle isolation the worst. I was just, as soon as it happened, I'm like, this guy, he's not going to handle this well. Yeah, I think, like with James, I found it hard. So I guess I am okay now. But at first it was like, because we'd had 6 months of being like really, really busy, and we thought we were about to do a film. And obviously there's other people going through worse stuff than that. But it was like, I was just at home and go, okay, what do I do now? And I felt like I needed to like have a schedule, because I'd just be like, oh, I've got so much time now. And then I would just waste it. And then you get to the end of the day and go, what the hell did I do today? Like, so I found that to be something interesting, but kind of even going forward, you can kind of think about how you use your time better maybe. So I think there'll be a lot of positives from this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that I've been doing in quarantine that I'm gonna bring into like my normal life when that resumes.
Yeah.
Because I definitely struggled with it at first. I like had to make a routine for myself because I was like, once again going from doing a lot of stuff all the time to absolutely nothing. But now that I've settled into it, it's actually getting quite nice, to be honest with you. And I'm, picking up, a lot of extra projects and creative things. So that's been fun. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird time, but it's also good. Yeah.
I feel like if it goes too much longer, people are going to get too comfortable with it and they're not going to want to leave the house again.
That is so true. I was just thinking that today. I was like, this is getting too comfortable now. I'm like, I'm really happy with it.
Well, you know what? It's really interesting you say that because I think the exact same words. I was talking to a casting agent last week and she said to me the exact same thing. She's like, I am too used to staying at home now. And I know some of my associates have said, let's just do self-tapes when this thing goes back. Let's just get self-tapes. Yeah. What's the point in going into a room for the whole day, seeing 12 people when they can all do self-tapes and I can watch my kid at the same time? And it was almost like you were saying, Dan, like they get too comfortable. There are like a lot of rewards to it, like time and, your kid, you don't need a babysitter. And it's going to probably change, I think, a few industries.
I agree. Yeah.
It's so interesting with the self-tapes because I love doing self-tapes. I prefer it way more than going into the room. And this is probably a very controversial opinion. I get very nervous in the room. I can do the job. I can put a good tape together and do the scene, but something happens in that moment of walking in from this waiting room to the room. I can't even describe it. That like I could put in all the work in the world and then something happens and it's gone. So I'm actually very happy about the self-tape situation so that they could see what I'm actually capable of doing when I'm not, doing that walk.
It is. It is funny that it's like you're sure you know what you're going to do, and then something in your mind. I find I start to think about stuff in auditions, and it's like, what are you doing? Like you knew it when you're at home, and it's funny. I know exactly what you mean, Pamela. It's like I've had that a lot of times. So I think I'm the same. I'd rather do a self-tape. Always,
and it's funny because I try to find actors that relate to this, and I am very relieved when I'll see like. I think it was Christian Bale. I don't know. A few other actors, very like well-known, very successful actors. They also talk about how terrible they are at auditioning, but somehow they eventually got over it or something.
Yeah. No. I was just going to quickly say, if you guys are looking for any reference, there's a really well-known story about Heath Ledger. He even says multiple times he's the worst person to audition. And, basically, he did an Australian film called Two Hands, took $100,000 from that, went to LA, did this film, 10 Things I Hate About You, with Julia Stiles, and just kept getting offered like popcorn films, didn't want to do them for a year, basically blew through all his money, had no money, and he wasn't good at auditioning. Like he said, like he just got nervous, his throat swelled up, he'd start shaking, and he just couldn't do it. And he said it got down to his very last kind of point where he was either going to have to go back to Australia or just literally rethink things. And he auditioned for The Patriot with Mel Gibson. And he talks about that audition where he goes in there with Mel Gibson and he froze and he couldn't even finish the lines. And he finished the audition. He says he went to Mel and he went to the casting and said, I'm really sorry for wasting your time, and left. And it was like that process of obviously you see him on screen and like he's like dynamite, but in the audition room he's like frozen. And apparently what happened is, they convinced him, his agent, and obviously Mel's Australian, Heath's Australian, to give him one more go a week later. And they just wanted to see him read the lines and then picture him the role. But it was that opportunity where if a guy who, you saw him in The Joker and pretty much anything he does, if he can be that on screen.
He was so magical.
Yeah. But there's your example. People are very different in the casting room as they are on screen.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. So before we finish up, I want to first of all say how amazing it was talking to you both. You guys are lovely, and I wish you nothing but the best with your upcoming film. I can't wait to see it. And Would you like to tell our listeners where we can follow you, where we can find out more about you, what you've been up to?
Yeah, cool. Well, we've got our Instagram page for the film, which is at Malibu Crush Movie. So we're kind of that's been a challenge getting content for that actually while we're been in isolation. So we've done a few little interviews to look out for that'll be coming up. So yeah, you can follow us on there and follow the film.
Awesome.
Well said, Dan. Yeah, well said.
That's it. Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much. This was fun.
No worries.
Thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Of course. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, and we can't wait to talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, awesome.
Sounds
Thanks,
good.
heaps.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks so much for listening. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all the things. If for some reason you want to see more of us, you can follow us on Instagram at No One's Okay.
And a special thanks to Jordan Ross Weinhold, Sean Moore, Jason Crow, Claire Palmer, Jackson Palmer, Tiffany Haymoff, Shane Rings, James Liddell, and our podcast is recorded at Soundworks Studios.
We can't wait to meet you!